Alright, another economics response video. This time to two guys, wepollock and another guy, BackBurner guy. Just see if we engage in some sort of conversation. They did a video called Solutions, but there wasn't any solutions in the video. So I just thought I would throw out a couple of ideas. The whole idea of getting people energized is good, but I sort of don't see the point in that if there's not a direction. I mean, you got to really do the direction thing first, and you really can't go in one direction and then say, whoops, we went the wrong direction and go the opposite way. That's still a bit problematic too. I think you just got to figure out what the problem is and what the solution is, and then do the surgery. I mean, then do it. You can't wait until everything's opened up and then to say, whoops, we're in the wrong part of the body, sew this part up and let's go somewhere else. I mean, that just isn't going to work. Really got to know what we're doing. So I think we got to talk about the real nuts and boltsy thing here, and get to it. So anyway, the solution thing, I'll get that over with quick because I'll offer my solution based on my theory, my definition of the diagnosis of the problem, which is that too much stuff, too much of what the world is, has been converted into investment stuff. Okay, so because the rich have gotten richer. So like in a feudal monarchy where the king owns everything, and all of a sudden everybody else just becomes a renter, they lose all incentive. Life becomes dismal and futile because there's no way out of their predicament. They can never own their home. They can never own their farm. They always have to pay this excessive tax to the king. So everything just kind of winds down because life becomes futile and pointless for the masses, and everything kind of gets overpriced, and everything's, they have the king has his stuff, and he can afford to pay people to go fight wars and do this and do that, do all kinds of inefficient things. He can even motivate people to build pyramids, which I often use as an example of just grotesque futility, a waste of a civilization. All their labor went into the creation of crap, nonsense. They could have built a brilliant empire, but they wasted it all on nothing. So anyway, pyramids. I mean, go figure. Monuments to their dead kings. I mean, how insane can that? And it just doesn't get more insane than that, and that's basically what we've run right back into the same puddle of crap. It's sort of been the doom of every civilization, I think, is this whole idea that wealth just gets the rich get too rich. They own everything, and life just becomes a rental contract with that ownership, and it just becomes so taxing because most of your work is being consumed, is being eaten away to put on their pile of wealth, and their wealth just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's just eaten every bit of dignity out of human life. So anyway, we're on that road. We got the numbers. I mean, they're the same as like 1929 or something, but they don't keep exact figures. I mean, we watch people's reported income, but we really don't measure their wealth and their ownership. So anyway, solution, sorry. So that's the fundamental problem, is that there's been a huge transfer of ownership from the masses who are living with their consumption, who are actually consuming, and the wealthy who are merely taxing people to consume, who are basically doing the owning and the renting. And so the stuff has migrated from being in little piles with individuals into big piles with a few tiny percentage of the human race. And now all this stuff, all this surplus is now expected to make a profit. It's got to glean interest, and it's that interest that is the death of the economy, because it's got to keep growing, and it won't be liberated until it does grow, until it only sells high, it doesn't sell low. And so that's the problem. And so it inflates the price of everything. Again, okay, I'll get to the solutions and then I'll talk more about the problem. Look, all we need to do is stop legacy wealth. Okay, so end inheritance, at least in the second generation of inheritance. No third generation inheritees. But I think easier would just be to say, look, we'll let you have a total. I'll even say 2 million. 2 million per any one individual from an estate, and the total that the estate can give away is 20 million. And so create that as the limits, and the rest of the money has to go back to the government. That means it'll sell the assets and pay the taxes, pay taxes with the money, pay for the infrastructure of our society with that, with those resources. The stuff goes back on the market, which keeps the prices down, keeps them within reach of the workers again. So basically the money goes back to the workers, the people who earned it in the first place, the people who made the productivity that the wealth came from. And the second thing I would do is just start nationalizing businesses. You don't have to nationalize the existing ones if you don't want to, but just start creating non-profit competing industries, non-profit insurance companies, non-profit this, whatever it is. Just create a non-profit business, non-profit retail company, whatever it is. Create some non-profits out there. You put an accountable CEO in charge. Even allow us an election process of the people. To vote these guys in and out of their jobs if we don't think they're performing. No government unions, though. No unions. If there are going to be government unions, government workers in those businesses, then the hell with it. The game's over. Because they're going to extort too much out of those businesses. They're going to make them too inefficient. So they've got to be allowed to be competitive. And there's got to be rules that they can't exploit workers, but we can't have this $250,000 pension crap for doing no work. It's just bullshit. It's way too much of inefficiency in government, and the inefficiencies created by unions that extort for privileges that have nothing to do with fairness, that just have to do with abuse. But anyway, that's even a secondary issue. It's just the fact is that we don't need owners. We just need competent people to run businesses, and those can be acquired. It's not magic. The average CEO is paid more than it would take. You could buy 100 college graduates, Harvard graduates even, and have them run a business for the price we're paying for one CEO. Silly. And no one's going to argue to me that 100 college graduates can't make better decisions or wouldn't have more imagination and capacity through their democracy or whatever you want to have. To come up with right answers for a business than one single man. It's just bullshit. It's a glass tower kind of thing. You don't get those jobs unless you're connected and have a name, and that's all people are buying. So whatever. So anyway, I think that solves the whole problem. The inheritance thing really solves it all. You don't even have to do the non-for-profit business thing, but I think it's a great idea. But just get rid of the legacy wealth thing. Get rid of the birthright thing. It's an abomination anyway. It's no better than having slavery still. I mean, that was birthright. We don't need birthright. We don't need people having privilege out of birthright. We don't need people having poverty out of birthright. Let's do that all men are created equal thing, and make it all humans are essentially created equal. Of course, unless they're born with no arms and legs or no brain. But the idea is obvious. All right, it's supposed to be a fair race of life, not an unfair race of life. No, not preposterous head starts. Little head starts, okay, whatever. We can't make it perfect, fine. But gigantic, monstrous, obscene head starts, screw that crap. It's so easy to say that's nonsense. It completely breaks the Adam Smith model of capitalism anyway. It should be an abomination even to the conservatives, because it's such a stupid cheat. It has nothing. It creates disincentives to work. It creates disincentives to be productive, and creates terrible incentives for people to be crooks and cheats. So let's get rid of that crap. Yeah, so that's enough of that. I guess I'll just ask a couple of questions to you. A lot of people are focused on this debt thing, and they say there was, there was too much borrowing, and too many borrowers. And the problem wasn't that, though. I think the problem was too many lenders. That was the problem. There was too many rich people with too much stuff, and they want that stuff to make money, and that's the bottom line. And so there was a ton of capital available to be borrowed. That's the whole point. I mean, it didn't matter what our deficits were. People were still buying our bonds for, at 4% for a 30-year bond. I mean, it's insane. How cheap, how easy it was to find somebody willing to give you money, to lend you money, because there was a ton of capital out there that the rich want to convert into an income. And that's the disaster. So anyway, so I just ask you, what do you think the rich people would do with their money if there was no personal debt or our national debt. So if the federal government didn't have a deficit and there was no personal debt, what would they have done with their money? I mean, if they weren't lending it to create consumption, what would they have done with it? I would argue that they would have done exactly the same thing that ended up happening anyway. They would have bubbled markets. They would have bought anything and everything that they could rent to a consumer in some other way. So the only thing that changed this in this equation was who basically got stuck holding the bag. By allowing consumers to borrow, they got stuck in contracts that they can't pay, and the rich got bailed out for half of that trouble. But the same thing would have happened. The same bubbles would have been created, and I think that we can see it. I mean, oil prices have, gone up and down 100%. Different commodities have gone up and down in crazy ways, the stock market included. Not as dramatically, but eventually it will be. But anyway, and the problem with real estate, though, is